Welcome to the second Inclusion in Adversity video interview, focusing on the amazing ways our members are supporting inclusion during the COVID-19 phenomena. The aim of these is to share inspiring practice with our member organisations so that we can all continue to learn, develop our thinking and progress on inclusion. I'm Debbie, one of the consultants at Inclusive Employers, and I'm joined today by Kiran Bance, Head of D&I at ITN. Kiran has kindly agreed to share some of the remarkable work that they're doing at ITN. So I'm just going to show us both. Hello. Hi, Kiran. Welcome.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Brilliant. So thank you so much for joining us, and I've got a few questions for you, and please go ahead and steer the conversation as you want. You know, feel free to add and take the conversation. We've got about 10 minutes this morning. So first of all, can you say in a few words a little bit about the work that where ITN is on its inclusion journey, and what inclusion means at this moment in time for your organisation, to give people a bit of context to what we're going to.
No problem at all. I think the first thing to say is that ITN is very much at the beginning of its journey. So we have done quite a lot over the years on specific demographics. But in terms of its inclusion journey as a whole, for the whole of its workforce, we're very much near the beginning. So in the last 10 months since I've been at ITN, we've introduced things like staff networks, we've done mentoring programs, buddying programs, and really thinking about what does the whole of our workforce need. That's been quite different from the previous approach. And I think the advent of our new CEO arriving about a year ago, Anna Mallet, I think really changed things up for us. It really led to a much more collaborative sort of climate and workspace that colleagues wanted to adopt. So we took that very much to heart and sort of started to think about, well, what does this mean for our strategy? What does it mean for our purpose? And what does it mean for our values as an organisation? What do we want to be sort of known for? And across the organisation, we ran some workshops just to sort of think about, well, what should our values be? And working in collaboration with our colleagues, we've sort of set those up as everyone needs to play their part. And in talking about playing their part, we've got 4 values. So that's partnership, agility, respect, and trust. And that really is the core that underpins everything that we want to do going forward. It underpins our corporate objectives, it underpins the D&I strategy, and actually everything that we've got going forward. So in the current environment, which, as we all know, has been a massive challenge for every organisation, I think that has really strengthened our position in being able to support our colleagues, because actually well-being has been the one thing that has been at the forefront of us supporting our colleagues in this really changeable time. And using our values of working in partnership, you know, trusting our colleagues and respecting them to deliver, and actually being much more agile with what we expect of colleagues, how they're going to deliver, being very outcomes focused, has given us that opportunity to really set things up so that colleagues are able to work in a way that works for them. So what I mean by that is, you know, if somebody needs to work sort of at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day because they've got childcare responsibilities or whatever, they can do that. You know, there isn't this expectation of colleagues that they need to do the 9 to 5 day in every single day. But we have that other end of the spectrum where in our newsrooms, we've still got colleagues going into the office because they've got integral news to deliver. So there's a real mix of expectation there of those who are remote working, but those who are going into the office as well. So it's quite a mixed bag.
It sounds like the values are you're really seeing them kind of embed and influence every aspect of what you do, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
You mentioned to me before that ITN's mission is, I don't know if it's your mission, but to bring truth to the world.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
how does that sit with the inclusion piece?
So really, our focus has always been to bring truth to the world through news gathering, and really that has been integral in setting up our values, because we can't do that without every single person in ITN wanting to commit to that, working in partnership with us, and actually trusting us that we are going to send them to the right places to gather that news, to trust them to bring that diversity of perspective and thought to a news story that might not ordinarily be there from other news gatherers. So it's quite an interesting perspective in that statement has really enabled us to, I suppose, flesh out those values in the exact ways we want our colleagues to support us and to work with us.
So that's what we often hear with organisations, that unless the values are authentic and you live and breathe them and they connect with what you're doing, then they don't really stand up, you know, and they don't have longevity. And it sounds like you've really tapped into something there.
Yeah, we absolutely, we're trying to. I mean, as I say, they're fairly new, so we are still embedding, but we're certainly seeing the positive signs of that, and being able to, if you like, hook everything that we're doing onto our values and use those values to embed everything we're doing is really helping.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So I guess moving on now to think more about COVID-19 and what have if there been, you mentioned a little bit about the specific challenges that you're facing as an organisation, but I didn't know if there were other things you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, so I think for us the challenge has been quite different in the sense of not only are we a news gathering organisation, i.e. we make the news for ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, but on the other side, the other half of our organisation is a production company. So, and what I mean by production is not only we make sort of a lot of the royals, documentaries, we do a lot of advertising, we support a lot of the sports events that happen throughout the calendar year. And a lot of those have been hit in very different ways. So sporting events, for instance, are non-existent for this year. So everything we had in our calendar has disappeared or been moved to next year. And that has really impacted our workforce in those areas. But on the other side, in the newsrooms, we've seen, you know, much more demand. So colleagues are working a lot harder and still going into the office. So we've got this dual purpose of, you know, people who possibly we are furloughing or who are working at home or working reduced hours, compared to the other half of the organisation where demand has massively increased. So we're really having to think very carefully about what are those challenges for both sets of the workforce while still bringing them together as one ITN, which has always been a massively core purpose of ours, is to promote that one ITN brand.
Brilliant. Okay, so I guess you're gonna, I mean, my next and last question is really about what practices have you been putting in place? How have you been responding to that? And I guess it'd be really interesting to hear at first how you've been managing those two different groups and that.
Yeah, I think communication has been key, absolutely key. I mean, our internal comms team have done a fantastic job of setting up different modes of communication for our colleagues to be able to tap into. And so we use that communication tool to be much more broad in communicating to everyone. So everything that we feel that all colleagues need in terms of their well-being and everything we offer on that. But also the social side, you know, opportunities to get together and do a quiz or have a drink together on a Friday or just support each other. So we've been doing a lot of work around buddying schemes and mentoring virtually so that colleagues have that support that they would normally be able to tap into in work. So actually communications has been able to focus on those elements really, really well. And then where we have individual challenges of different areas, we've, you know, the senior leadership team have been very good at continuously connecting with their staff and ensuring that they are hearing from them and feeding back to us what they need. So we've done some very targeted approaches of, you know, sort of one-to-one team meetings with different teams, figuring out what they need, etc. We've also utilised our staff networks really well. So pushing a lot of material out to our networks for them to go out to their members. And doing virtual catch-ups with them. So I have a regular catch-up in the diary, a virtual catch-up with our working parents network. who have been really good about giving us feedback on what's working and what isn't. And I've been able to feed that into our future work plans of what do we need to deliver next.
So it sounds like a lot of what you're doing is listening before you're gathering loads of data before you develop stuff.
Exactly. And I think one of the ways that we've sort of started that probably informal communication piece really well. And what we want to do now is really tap into everybody. So those who possibly aren't connecting through that communication tool. So we're now next week launching a pulse survey, which we will do sort of 1 or 2 times a month, to be able to tap into what is it that's working, what do our colleagues need from us, and deliver it and impact at that point in time. So I really feel that, you know, if we wait a month to do a pulse survey and then action it in a month, we may well miss what people need now, because our climate is moving so quickly. You know, every day we're hearing a new piece of information from the government on what needs to change. And I think we need to react and change at that same pace. So it's one of the things that I'm really keen to do, is use the pulse surveys to start to be really quick at impacting and effecting change.
So, and we've got a couple of minutes left, but I know that you've already started to think about how you're going to bring people back to work as well. So it'd be really interesting to hear about some of your thinking around that.
Yeah. So for us, it's very much capitalising on that agility that we've talked about in our values. So that agility means that, right, what do we need to do to change our working practices and our workforce coming back? So a lot of that is faced with, we know that we'll have a longer term prospect of more remote working, which, you know, has been quite a challenge in the past to embed, but now has become embedded really, really well, I suppose because we've had to. So one of the things that's been great is that people are thinking about, well, actually, we don't need all of our colleagues to come back. But if we don't need them to come back, how are we going to manage communicating to them? How are we going to think about developing them? How are we going to manage communication, team meetings, and all of that? So thinking about all of those elements and how that affects our culture and what change in our culture is really, really important. So that's all to come.
Yeah, I suppose it's going to be very different. Our relationship building and the way we build rapport is going to be really different. It'd be really interesting to speak to people who've started a new job during this period to find out how it's impacted on them settling in and building relationships.
Exactly. And all of that, we are gathering a lot of that information. So we've had a few people who've started in this period, and we are connecting with them and sort of asking them, what has been your experience and what can we do to change things going forward? Because we fully expect to be inducting and recruiting and developing colleagues through a remote working environment for the next, well, however long it takes.
So thank you, that's absolutely fascinating. And for me particularly, because I've been mulling over in my mind, how are we going to create inclusive environments if we do continue to work in this way? How are we going to make sure that we manage our biases, that we offer opportunities to everybody within the team, that we've got really good recruitment practices? So it's really interesting to hear how you're starting to think about that, and we'd love to hear more, I think, going forward. So thank you, Kiran, that's brilliant. I really
Thanks, Debbie, it's really good to talk to you.
All right.
Thanks.
And I just wanted to pop up my last slide, because we'd love to hear from other people who are doing work in this way. So if you wanted to email me, here is my email address. And if you've got great innovative practices that are evolving at the moment, please do get in touch, and we would love to do an interview with you. Have a good day, everyone, and bye, Kiran. Lovely to
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.